Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and my guest today is Nick Gorham, who is a former representative from Western Coventry, Foster, and Gloucester,
Yes.
and also has had a really good career at fighting for the things that are best for Rhode Islanders.
Well, thank you.
Yep, I know you were really there for regionalization. You tried very hard to bring the idea of consolidation forward. And of course, we have already talked about the separation of powers, but you've always been a champion of the things that are right for the people of the state.
Well,
and I
thanks.
appreciate that very much.
Oh, thanks. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it is what you're supposed to be doing. Just lately,
Yes.
because of my friend Chairman Gallison,
Yes.
a lot of attention has turned to the grant process
Yes.
of our government.
Yes.
There are two kinds of grants. One is legislative grants, which is money that comes from the Speaker and the Senate President.
Purely discretionary on the part of the Speaker and the President to distribute that money. There are no guidelines, no limits. They just give the money to whomever they want.
Yes, and I have taken some, I'll have to tell you. I haven't for 2 years, but good groups in my community asked for them. They do good work, and I started giving them. And then 2 years ago, I just stopped.
Yeah. Well, look,
It's not fair. Why does one community get more than another? Why does one baseball team get more than another? Are the kids in Cranston worth more than the kids in Providence or Tiverton? It's just not fair on that level.
Right.
And then it's not transparent.
No, not
And
at
it's
all.
not accountable to
No.
taxpayers.
No, it is not. I, in the early part of my career, in the early 2000s, I took some legislative grants, and the caucus I was in, the Republican caucus, we agreed as a group we weren't going to do it anymore. There was no other way to make the point that this is just bad government.
It's bad government. It
And-
really is.
and-
And some people look at it as buying votes with other people's money.
Right.
Quite frankly.
I just
and
call them.
it should be stopped or really, really reformed so that there's no politics in it at all.
Well, I'm still convinced that the legislative grants that give all that discretion and power to the Speaker and President are unconstitutional. The Constitution requires any local or private appropriation has to be voted on by the House, no matter how small, no matter how trivial. If it's local or private, it has to be voted on by the entire House. And it has to be a 2/3 vote. Article 6, Section 11 of the
Yeah,
Constitution
it's part of the budget.
requires that. And it's, in
But here-
essence, ignored.
Once again, the Supreme Court kind of let us down on that one. You actually took a suit.
We brought a lawsuit, the Republican caucus did. We took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and we asked the Supreme Court to declare the scheme that the Speaker and Senate President had created that gave them all this discretion to distribute millions and millions of dollars of legislative grants any way they wanted. We asked the Supreme Court to declare that unconstitutional for a number of reasons. I won't get into all of them here. But we had good constitutional authority.
Yeah.
And I think that if we had gotten to the merits, we would have won. But the Supreme Court said, they're one of the only Supreme Courts in the country that's ever said this, taxpayers do not have standing to contest spending by government, even if it violates the Constitution. And that was a great disappointment to the entire
Yeah,
caucus.
so
But the
they
Supreme
didn't
Court,
rule on it. They just said you weren't allowed to question it.
they called it standing, which is a way that courts, many...
Sidestep it.
Well, you can say that. I'm not
All
going to
right,
say that.
I'll say it because I'm not a lawyer.
So,
They just didn't rule then.
They didn't rule on
They
it.
didn't look at any of the merits. They just said, no,
Nothing.
you don't have the right to bring this.
right.
Yeah.
right. So, the question is still out there. And you know what? It's too bad that they didn't decide it, and it's too bad that your complaints against Representative Gallison, creating legislative grants for himself and his so-called charitable foundation, too bad we couldn't have stopped it.
And we should be stopping it.
Yes. Look what happened.
It is other people's money, and we should be spending it wisely and be accountable to them.
Yes.
You know, the taxpayers, they just keep giving, right?
Yes.
And we act like it's our money to give, and that was one of the reasons I stepped back from it. It's wrong. I give my own money now.
Yes. You know, like
Right, if I think it's a good charity, then I give my own money. I shouldn't be giving taxpayers' dollars.
well, let's be fair. Like many constitutionally mischievous things that government does, there is some virtue in the legislative grants because they give the money to some good organizations. But the problem is that you're going to see inevitably situations like Gallison, where you have representatives who are totally abusing the system to benefit themselves. And that could be prevented by requiring that it be voted upon in the budget, putting it in the budget, requiring that, and making legislators vote for specious grants like that are just going to create mischief and benefit people like Representative Gallison.
I honestly think it takes more than just being put in the budget, because sometimes those budgets are just passed through without people really going through all the line items.
Right.
You know, they'll put them in an article, and the people will say, well, inside this article is something really good for my community, so I'll vote for these legislative grants. I think the program needs to be taken out of politics. And yeah, it still can be voted on as a line item,
Yes.
but where there cannot be, you know, the speaker or the Senate president saying, we'll give this one to you and we'll give this one to you and yours will be bigger than yours, and those kinds of things. It just should be out of politics,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it should.
It just should be. I proposed I came up with what I thought was a solution. Nobody's coming up with others, and there needs to be a conversation around it. I'm not saying mine's the only solution, but we need to have a conversation about how do we get it out of politics if we want to keep them, or just abolish it altogether.
The way you get it out of politics, and you're trying to do it as many legislators before you tried to do it, take the grants out of politics, you have to take advantage of a situation that so acutely demonstrates that these grants are bad and they create mischief in government. They create perhaps even criminal conversion
Sure.
of government funds to benefit legislators. We don't know that yet, but it's looking like
It's looking bad.
it's looking bad in the Gallison case. I think the public awareness and the profile of the mischievousness of legislative grants is at an all-time high. And I hope that the General Assembly will do something about it. Speaker Mattiello says he
Yes.
has something coming out, but
There's
let's
not a
just-
lot of conversation about
No.
it, and so going from legislative grants, there's this thing called departmental or community service grants.
Yes.
They're one and the same thing.
Yes.
This is like a pool of money inside every department, Department of Education, Transportation, HHS, and they are just, without accountability, giving money out. And
Though-
this is Gallison's money and Institute of Sports and all this. It needs really to be looked at.
Yes. Well, what we're learning, at least in the stories that I've recently read in the Providence Journal, is that these larger grants, these are like legislative grants on steroids. They're called community service grants. They're for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Big money.
They're given to large nonprofit charities to spend as they wish. And what we're learning is that they're using the money to lobby the General Assembly. And you know what lobbyists do with money that they get to,
They give to
they
legislators.
contribute it to legislators.
Yeah.
So this is just a bad system. It really needs
Bad
reform.
system, and it needs sunshine.
Yes.
And some real conversations around it.
Yes.
I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to have to stop there. Maybe
been
we'll get him
brisk.
back to talk more about this. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.